gentlemen.
Uh-oh.
It's time for the Early Bird Special. Bringing you the best stories from the world of sports and sports entertainment. Now, here are your hosts, Sparky and Burdick.
And welcome back to the Early Bird Special. I am Chris Burdick, Sparky with me as always. And Sparky, it's Dead President's time, baby. NFL playoffs are here. If you've been watching football this entire holiday season, you've been having a great time, as I have. College bowl games have been amazing. College playoffs have been amazing. And just going into NFL playoffs, there's nothing better. There's no time better in the NFL world right now than playoff season. Unfortunately, though, Sparky, we're both going into this a little bit on a low because our teams tragically, burnt to a crisp at the end of the year. As your Miami Dolphins and my Atlanta Falcons both, unfortunately, did not make the cut this year. I'm going to let you start because I know there's a little bit around your team going around with Tyreek Hill as well. So what are your thoughts, my friend, how everything ended?
I mean, being a team in Miami, they always get, the rumor mill, and, it was a sad year, bouncing off of, two back-to-back playoff seasons with Coach McDaniel, with Tua's injuries, after having a full season under his belt last season, the ideas of this is going to be the top 5 offense was kind of bittered down in the beginning of the season when Tua went down, missed 4 or 5 weeks. And players, if you played fantasy and you had players like Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, even the running back core, it was a tough season to watch. But I'm a Dolphins fan, so I'm not too surprised. But after the season before, knowing that we were going to lose Wilkins, Xavier Howard, heavy veterans, Chubb, who ended his season with an injury at the end of the season before. So we already kind of were backing in. Plus Jalen Phillips, tore his ACL the year before and then tore his other ACL this season, early in the season. So, I mean, players were dropping like flies. Ending with Tyreek Hill, he had came out. The guy cannot stay off social media. And, he had started the season with his own very podcast. He broke his wrist in a scrimmage with the Commanders in training. So, it was a season filled with injuries. But, he's an emotional type guy, which I love and hate. It's a good time when you have a player that leaves his heart on his sleeve. But, to attack the team, that's kind of a player where his PR group needs to keep him away from the podium after games like that, especially when it's in a season like that with no Tua, when we had to watch Snoop play the last 2 games. And once again, just like 2 years ago, it came down to those last two games of the season where we could have locked up a playoff spot. Whether as a fan, it would be sad to see Tyreek go, but I'm looking at the financial side. This guy is, 10-15% of the team salary cap. And for what we gave up to get him, I would expect a little bit close to what we would get back, after a week of the season ending. And, his agent came up and one says, he wants to stay in Miami, and then kind of hit his back where, the door's wide open. It's going to be a long off season, but we have plenty of holes to fix. We're going to lose Calais Campbell. We're going to lose Terran Armstead. So that offensive line that was already at the bottom of the list is only going to, it needs some veteran help. So hopefully he stays, and, we'll go from there. I know we've got Jalen Waddle locked in. I've also seen our defensive coordinator, which I was kind of happy to have with Anthony Weaver, that we snagged from Baltimore the year before. As a Dolphin fan, we've been rotating defensive coordinators ever since McDaniel's been there. This is our 3rd defense coordinator in 3 seasons. Last year we had Vic Fangio, which didn't really lock in with the young players. He has more of the veteran presence that he likes to play on the field. So I was happy what we saw with Anthony Weaver. Like I said, with no Jalen Phillips, no Christian Wilkins that didn't end the season on his own over there in the Raiders. And Chubb never even suited up this season. So ideally, I would hate to see him go. I've seen him getting head coaching vacant or interviews, but we will see what we will see. Hopefully Tyreek is back. If not, sayonara. Better stack up them draft picks.
Well, and everything that I have seen going forward says that Tyreek is going to stay in Miami. I know his agent was on McAfee's show on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, explained a lot of things around the wrist injury and how severe it was and how much pain that Tyreek was playing through all season. Not to mention that his entire intention is to stay with Miami and to make something happen there. But I don't know. Tyreek's words were pretty damning, I should say, actually. Talking about Atlanta real quick, though, I mean, it was pretty much self-explanatory. I think it's exactly what we expected to happen if you were in the fan base. Kirk, I mean, I've been harping on it all damn year. You've heard me on this show speak it forever. I was not a Kirk Cousins fan. I did not think the Kirk Cousins signing was going to work at all. Loved the Penix pick, and honestly, he's kind of shown a little bit that he can make stuff happen. He's got great poise in the pocket. I think he can build off of that. And I think the offense looks great. I think you need to continue to build on the defense a little bit, but now you're going to have to compete with a Tampa Bay team that is going to be coming off 2 straight years as the champions, and they look great with Baker at quarterback, and I don't think they're changing anytime soon. And I got to start saying it louder, apparently, for the people in the back to hear, but we need to start giving Mike Evans some damn respect. Because Mike Evans is arguably the best wide receiver in football and has been for a long time. 11 straight years with 1,000 yards is incredible, no matter who you play for. I get it. He had Tom Brady for a couple years, but really, if you look at it, that only heightened what already was one of the best starts to any wide receiver's career. And I think he needs to start getting a little more respect in that area as well. But I have to agree with you, Sparky. I think in the same regard as Miami, I think Atlanta was exactly where they were supposed to be, just failed at the very end to sink that last playoff spot like they should have. But I have hope that next year we're going to turn this around with the Penix train and make something happen out of it. But let's look into who did make it to the playoffs this year, Sparky, as the Chiefs and the Lions both get the first round bye, being the number 1 seeds in both the NFC and the AFC. Let's start in the NFC side, though, with the Eagles taking on the Packers, who are banged up. I know I said it this morning on First Look that I still have faith in Jordan Love and the Packers to pull this off, but the more and more you see that injured list for the Packers stack up, the more and more it really seems like they may not have the manpower to really keep up with one of the best offenses in the NFL. So what do you say?
I'm going Philly. I'm going to ride that Barkley train. They're going to have Hurts back, which might not be 100% Hurts, but Green Bay is banged up. And I know Green Bay made that knocked out somebody last season. Was it Philly last year that they did the
Yes.
same
No,
thing?
no, no. They knocked out Dallas.
Dallas. That was right.
Yeah,
So
because that was my point this morning, was that I kind of felt that they might do the same thing with Philly if that offense can get going, because this offense is nothing to really shy at. They are very good. They're very fast and they're young. They're not a lot of tape on them still. So
mhm.
if Romeo Dobbs and Tucker Kraft could really get going and get some touchdown catches for Jordan, who is a gunslinger, they still have a chance. Because I think I heard Greg Olson say it this morning on Cowherd. You can have a running back score 150 yards, or I'm sorry, rush for 150 yards and get a couple scores. Well, that's fine. You're going to go score 17 points. We'll go score 30 through the air.
And Green
So
Bay's
which one are you really
defense
going
is
to go
not a
with?
pushover.
Not at all.
But
Not
I'm
at
going to
all.
go with Philly. They're at home. I don't see Green Bay having the strong power to be able to go to Philly and beat them. But it should be a hell of a game. That's one of the games I'll be definitely watching.
Oh, it's going to be one of the highlights of the weekend. But let's go to the next one real quick. Washington headed to Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers. I think the Buccaneers are on fire right now, brother. And I know Dan Quinn has a little bit of, some magic in the playoffs, as it were, especially with that defense. But I don't think Jaden Daniels is going to have the spark this time. I think Tampa Bay takes this one. And I think it's all going to be behind the arm of Baker Mayfield and behind that really big defensive line and Vita Vea just stopping Jaden from getting anywhere.
Yeah, Tampa's got the 3-point spread, but it's going to be a close one. I think it could go either way. Tampa's they're on fire, but they've also shown, that they could be beat.
Yeah.
And Washington is a young team. I'm going to go with Tampa just because I like what the offense is doing, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a lot closer than Vegas shows.
And you know what? This is not the first time these two have gone against each other in the playoffs in the last couple of years. Don't forget when Tom Brady was on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and they had to take on Heineke a couple years ago and almost lost. So
Mhm.
there's a little bit of history here. I know it's not a lot of the same players on the team, but you could easily say that this could be one of the best, matchups of the weekend as well. And then to round out the NFC, we got the Rams and the Minnesota Vikings in Arizona. This will be on Monday. The game obviously moved from SoFi to Arizona due to all the fires in LA right now. Probably the smartest move they could have done. From what I understand, too, if you had tickets to this game, they did offer you tickets in Arizona if you can make it out there to the game. But I mean, it's a nice, thought, I would suppose. But I think the Rams are going to be a one and done this year in the playoffs. I don't think they have the offensive manpower anymore. I love Puka Nacua, I love Cooper Kupp, and I love Matthew Stafford. And they have magic. There is some LA magic that could maybe come out, but I don't think they have what it takes to take on this just really high-powered Minnesota Vikings defense and Brian Flores, who just loves to blitz the hell out of you. I don't think the offensive line of LA could really keep up with that. And honestly, as bad as Sam Darnold looked against the Lions, Sam Darnold has looked great against everybody else. So I don't think that you should trust anybody else except Sam Darnold, Justin Jefferson, and the Vikings.
I 100% agree. I mean, the Rams will keep it close. I like the Rams running backs. Puka,
Kyron scores every week.
Puka
Every
and
week.
Cup have been so off, 50-50. Puka will have a good game and Cup will have nothing. I think Minnesota's defense, I'm not a big fan of Flores, but Minnesota's defense, man, the guy, if he's a
You
defensive coordinator, you got to go with him. But he is not a head coach. We'll get into head coaching later. But as long as he's a defensive coordinator, I think the Vikings get it. They better hope so because they don't, they might have to play the Lions again next week. So I don't have any faith in the Rams defensive wise. So I'm going to go with the Vikings just because they have the all around better team.
I have to agree. I think coaching wise, I think they're better coached. Although McVay is amazing as a head coach, you have two great coaches on the opposite side, and O'Connell and Brian Flores, who are just whizzes at their own craft. So I don't think that you can outmatch that really right now. And they just don't have the manpower. Realistically, this defense in Minnesota scores a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to keep up with the defense that scores. But let's switch over to the AFC real quick, starting with the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen taking on the Denver Broncos and Bo Nix. Now, I know what you are going to say, Mr. Sparky, so I'm going to start with you. Go ahead. Let them know. Let them know what you're going to say.
I think if anyone's going to upset it this week, it'll be Denver. Denver has a good defense, and I think they have an all-around team on the defensive side that could slow down that Josh Allen boy. But, I've also seen a lot of players in Buffalo that are questionable to play. A lot of these games, the spread is pretty straight. I think just because Buffalo doesn't have all around a lot of weapons, I think if Denver can play like they do at defense, I think Bo Nix could put up just enough points to keep that game close. And I'm going to go with Denver. I also, on the way here, I read that Lamar Jackson got the All-Pro quarterback position. So I'm also thinking that Josh Allen's not going to get that MVP that everyone's thinking.
We can get into the MVP talks in a different video because that'd be a whole different thing. And I know there's a lot of speculation of who deserves it and whose turn it is and all of that, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to say here nor there.
Go
I have
Broncos.
I have to agree with you that the Denver Broncos have a very, very good chance of pulling an upset this week, only because they have a great team on defense, as you said, and their coaching, I say, is better because you have Sean Payton on the other side, a Super Bowl winning coach. He's been there before, he knows what it takes to get there. And I think that that's going to upset a lot of people on the opposite side. However, I'm still going with the Buffalo Bills. I think Buffalo has way too much on offense just with Josh Allen alone. It's going to be way
Ugh.
too much to handle. I know you don't like him. It is what it
Ugh.
is. I do think, though, that the Denver Broncos will give them a scare. And then this will be the charge the Broncos need to say, okay, if we're going to pull this off, we're really going to take out the Baltimore Ravens or the Chiefs or both if you have to. You're going to have to get through teams like this and you have to make those plays. So it's going to really come down to Josh Allen and the coaching of the Buffalo Bills if they can pull this off, because that's really going to be the main chess piece is if Sean Payton can outcoach the opposite side. Let's move on to the next game real quick. We got the Baltimore Ravens taking on their rival of the Pittsburgh Steelers. The AFC North back in the playoffs as always. Mike Tomlin with another winning season, edging them into the playoffs in this new three-team wild card selection. I don't think it's going to be enough though. I don't believe that Russell Wilson nor Justin Fields have what it takes to take on this really, really good Baltimore defense. I know we love to talk about the offense because it's all anybody likes to talk about is Lamar Jackson and
Mhm.
Derrick Henry. We all love to talk about it. They all score. I get it. And I understand they do not have their number one wide receiver this week in Zay Flowers. Matters not. Every single wide receiver on that team is equally as good. And I don't mean that in a sense as they're all great. I mean they're all okay. I love Zay Flowers, but he's not a game changer as he will be in the future. I think that he's starting to get there, but it doesn't matter. I think that offensively, they have exactly what they need to blow up this Steelers defense. And defensively, they have exactly what they need to just make it an absolute nightmare of a night for either Russell or Justin, whoever is at quarterback for the Steelers.
Yep. I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers has what it's going to take. It might be a close game in the first half, but I think the Ravens just demolish them. And I really, on paper, I don't think anyone's going to be able to stop the Ravens this playoff. I
You got
just
the
don't think
Ravens going
so.
all the way?
I think I'm looking at the Ravens and Eagles this season, but I'll save those because I might be wrong after this week. But I personally don't think Russell Wilson can pull any magic out his ass this week. He's shown that he could probably play for the Raiders or something, but I don't think he's going to be the quarterback that takes the Steelers to the promised land. And I sure the hell, if any coach was going to be able to slow down Baltimore, it would be Tomlin in Pittsburgh. But I don't think they have enough on the field to be able to stop all the weapons, even without Flowers.
It's going to be a brutal game regardless. These two teams, well, actually, the AFC North in general, when they hit the playoffs, are always brutal games and they're fun to watch. But I agree with you. I think Harbaugh in general is just going to end up edging this one out. I think Tomlin's going to do everything he can, and so will Arthur Smith to make it happen. But I don't see Russell being the key to making this happen. And then next year, Pittsburgh's going to have to make the major decision of who you're keeping because both quarterbacks are up on the contracts here. So are you keeping Russ or are you keeping Justin? That's going to be one of the main talking points of the offseason, which I think is going to end up starting next week for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the last game of the weekend for us, we got the Houston Texans and the LA Chargers in Houston. I am actually going to go with the Chargers in this game. The other Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh, a Super Bowl, a coach that has gone into the Super Bowl before, somebody who knows what it takes to win, and I think he's got the perfect offensive setup to really slow down this Houston team who has been struggling. I don't think anybody in the AFC South really looked good at all this season. Houston could have lost this spot to a really, really bad Jacksonville team if they played anywhere close to as good as they should have. And realistically speaking, I think they're going to get exploited. I think CJ is going to do everything he can to keep them in this game, but I think it's just the year that Justin Herbert and this offense in LA for the Chargers finally takes that leap that everybody's been waiting for them to take and head to Kansas City to take on their rivals in the Chiefs and potentially knock out them as well and stop the three-peat.
I can see it. I think this is probably going to be the worst game of the week. The Texans have just been going downhill. After losing a couple receivers, a couple big playmakers, it almost feels like they shouldn't even be in the playoffs at this time. If it wasn't for, winning the division and, stapling that spot in. But I just don't think the Texans have it. They, whether it's injuries, coaching, or scheduling, but they just don't look like they're molded as a team right now. And the Chargers are getting hot at the right time. So I'll have to go with the Chargers. I don't think the Chargers go much farther after that, but it should set up a nice AFC West showdown next week.
It'll be something. Well, either way, it's going to be AFC
It's a
showdown in your
Denver,
bracket
the
because
Chargers.
you're going to get Denver or the Chargers headed there. And to be
Hmm.
honest with you, if you are an LA Charger fan and you get past the Texans, I would feel really good headed to Kansas City if you end up heading to Kansas City.
Hmm.
Because Kansas City doesn't exactly look like the best team either right now. They actually, I don't think they have scored over 30 points yet this season. And if you can put up a 30 piece on them, it'd be really hard to keep up with the Chargers in the playoffs. So, but that is
Or
where
the
we are,
Broncos.
or the Broncos. I'm not. I'm still skeptical when it comes to the Broncos. I would like to see them win, but I got Buffalo going all the way to the Super Bowl this year.
Oh,
I think it's going to
God.
be Detroit and Buffalo this year, as my early prediction. But as you said, we will wait and see after the wild card, and we'll get back to you guys as soon as we can with the playoffs. But
But
let's talk
there
about it.
is a lot of coaching going around before we wrap up this show. I know
Absolutely.
there's going to be probably a couple more before it's all over with, but I know you've already kind of picked who do you think is going to fit into these vacancies. But I'll start with the Bears. They fired Effortless late November, so I know they've got a long list of coaches they've interviewed already. Sadly, the Dolphins defensive coordinator, hopefully he doesn't go nowhere. But who do you think fits perfect right now in Chicago?
Eberflus getting the boot really was it should have happened earlier in the season, realistically speaking. I know they are talking to Pete Carroll. I hear that. It's a rumor around the bend. I don't think Pete gets the job, though. I think Pete wants to flirt with the idea of coming back and coaching, but much like Bill Belichick, it may just be time for those type of coaches to move on and for it to, move to a younger side of it. Personally, if I am looking at any coach for them to look at, I think it needs to be the Houston offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick. Uh, Bobby has come in and helped a very young Houston team turn everything around with a young, great quarterback in CJ Stroud. And I think Chicago's in the exact same spot. They just need somebody who's done it before. And I know D'Amico had a lot to do with it as well. I'm not saying that Slowick was the reason, but I think with him, it would just work a little bit better. He was an offensive mind who knows how to build an offense around your highly capable quarterback in Caleb Williams. And you can teach him, hey, I know you want to run. I know you want to make these plays and make it look magical. I get that. But let's do it in a way that keeps you safe, that gets us positive yardage, and gets us at least the scoring range to make these games competitive. And at this point right now, I think the best person to do that is somebody who's done it already with a very young and a very depleted offensive line of Houston, and that's Bobby Slowick.
Well, I personally think, they probably should have let him go last season, but it looks like they might have the quarterback. I'm not 100% sold on that yet, but going down the list of who they've interviewed, I'm leaning on. I think they snagged one of the coordinators from the Lions. I think they've seen enough in Detroit and might jump on that train. I know they've already interviewed Aaron Glenn. I know they're talking about Ben Johnson. I'm going to lean more towards Ben Johnson just because of the offensive mind, and that's what they've really been lacking in Chicago. So I would say one of the coordinators from Detroit, and then moving over to Jacksonville, which was kind of a surprise to me because I mean Doug Peterson's only been there what, a year?
Yeah, but I also kind of saw it coming when Khan kind of decided it was over. You could see it in his eyes that it was just, yeah, this isn't working. I don't like this. But I mean, I know I've said it to you off screen, but we'll say it here as well. Doug Peterson has to have the most unconventional coaching life I've ever seen. I
Yes.
mean, the man wins a Super Bowl with Philly. Next year gets fired for his offensive coordinator, Nick Sirianni, who magically gets all of the credit. None of it goes to Doug Peterson or Nick Foles or Carson Wentz or whoever the hell was going great that year. It all goes to Sirianni. Then he goes to Jacksonville, where it seems like he's going to have a solid start. has a really terrible season with Jacksonville, has to sit on a plane for 7 hours as they wait for a storm to pass till they get to go home, just for him to get fired by Shad Khan on the other side. And it just I feel for him. I really do. I feel for the man. It kind of just
Mhm.
it tears me up inside. But realistically speaking, I think if you were Jacksonville, and this is only because I've seen it around the bend, I know you just said that Johnson may be going to the Bears. I think Johnson ends up in Jacksonville. I think Ben Johnson, who has vocally said that he likes the idea of going to Jacksonville, and if you
Mhm.
really look at it, it kind of mimics what Detroit already has. You have a really capable quarterback who's very accurate. You have two young running backs who are great at one, as great at grounded pound. The other one is a great scat back. You have a young wide receiver out there who is a rookie who's looking to break out. I think everything is really lined up well for Jacksonville's offense for Ben to come in and really just utilize just like he did in Detroit. So I think Jacksonville ends up being where Ben Johnson ends up.
I mean, I could see that. I know I wouldn't want to take that job just because I don't think Trevor Lawrence is the NFL starting quarterback, but he's already gone
I
through a couple
disagree.
coaches and he's going to have to go through another coach, probably a couple years before he's comfortable. Just looking at the list of who they've requested, I'm leaning towards either Kellen Moore, depending on how far the Eagles go in the off or go in the playoffs, because he has proven wherever he's at, he's got that offensive mind and is good with quarterbacks. And the other one is kind of a curveball, but I could also see Joe Brady leaving Buffalo. I know Josh Allen came out this morning in an interview and said they asked him, what has Joe Brady brought to you as a player? He said nothing. The guy's nothing. Don't take him. You don't want him because he doesn't want to lose him. But I could see Joe Brady or even Kellen Moore being a positive choice for Jacksonville. And then moving over to the Raiders, another coach, what a lot of people thought he would, stick around more than a season or two. But Pierce getting fired on the 7th of January. They're also going to be hiring a new GM probably together. I know the
Tom says
rumor
they
mill
must
is
be in
Tom.
sync.
There you go.
They must
Uh,
be unified.
yeah,
That's how you win championships, Sparky. You got to be in sync now.
yeah, and I've also read that Brady has reached out. Several other teams have reached out to Belichick, probably a little too late. But if anybody could probably still in, it'd probably be Brady. Do you have anyone? I personally think it's either going to be if Pete Carroll is hired anywhere, I think it would be with the Raiders. Or I can also see Spagnola from Kansas City being a perfect fit with the Raiders with that defensive mind. But I don't know because with no quarterback and really
Mm.
not a top draft pick, only other players you could think of is probably Kirk Cousins, or unless they could trade for McCarthy from Minnesota, I don't see a lot of a positive a positive job on the line with Chiefs defensive coordinator. Should I stay in Kansas City or should I go to Vegas and coach the Raiders?
Well, I mean, now let you see how I'm dressed super nice today. We're getting into the mind of an NFL owner today, doing the hiring processes. If I am Mark Davis, first I'm getting a better haircut. Secondly, you're sitting here needing a GM and a coach. Now, personally, I believe now Mark has to pay now what? This is going to be four coaches now in the
Yep.
last 5
Two
years
GMs,
and three GMs. Yeah.
three GMs.
Um, so here's my thought process. Mark loves to make a big splash. He's in Vegas now, baby. He's Mark
Mhm.
Davis of Vegas. So he wants to make a big splash. So does Tom. Obviously, they want everybody to be in sync. They want everybody to be unified, and they want it all to work. So let's put the tinfoil hats on here. Personally, I don't think their choice is in the NFL. I think it's in college. And I think it's going to be one of two men, either Deion Sanders, because you know who their number one draft choice is going to be on that board. It's going to be Shadur as their quarterback. Even if he is, scouts are all saying he's not good enough, all that doesn't matter. Mark's
He
taking him.
won't. He won't land at 6.
No. Well, you never know. You got Cam Ward up there too. Like you got a couple people coming in, Q and Ewers from Texas might be going in. So there are possibilities that other people take other teams. However, if it's not Dion, I think it could potentially be Marcus Freeman from Notre Dame. Marcus being now the first ever African American coach to make it to the finals in the college football playoff, taking Notre Dame and turning an entire program around that was historic, then gone to shit, and now back to being historic again. He's an amazing coach. He's a player's coach. He's done everything he needs to. I think if Notre Dame wins the championship this year, Freeman at least gets an offer for the job. But I think the GM ends up being John Gruden. And here's why. John and Dion leading your team with Tom and Mark feeding you money. Tell me that's not a storyline. And Shador is your quarterback, possibly Shiloh at a corner, because they need corner help, and who better to pick up than Dion's other kid? I think it all fits, man.
I don't think they should get Shador. I mean, in a Disney movie, it'd sound perfect.
Hey, I understand.
I don't think Gruden's ever going to get back.
Have you seen Mark Davis's hair? This man clearly thinks he's Ralph Wiggum. He is a cartoon character.
I don't think they have the willpower to get Shador. Even if they traded all the picks that they got for Devontae, I don't think that anyone's going to let them move up. But it could happen. And I think a curveball, if the Jets don't get Rex Ryan, I could totally see Rex Ryan being the loudmouth in Vegas and coaching with his brother, because his brother's a coach over there in Vegas. But you might be right. You might be right. But I'm going to move over because I know we can talk about the Raiders.
Yeah, we can talk about them all
circus
here.
Fire. But the New England Patriots, I think we both agree. I think Vrabel's the guy. I don't think
it's a lock, dog. They're getting the band back together. Mike Vrabel coming back as the HC. You're going to get McDaniels back as the OC. They're bringing
Dolphins just fired their wide receiver coach, Mr. Wes Welker, today, so I can totally
Wes
see
Welker
that happening.
can go back to being in there too.
Good.
Maybe they sign Mayo to be the linebacker coach again.
Bye.
Doesn't matter. They're getting the Belichick band back together over there without Bill, because that's what Robert's going to do. Robert's at this point saying, shit, I fucked up with Gerard. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. And by the way, the only reason that man said that at all is because Vrabel said, shit or get off the pot, old man.
Yep.
You know that boy ain't going to get you to a Super Bowl. Shit or get off the pot. You saw what I did in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Come hire me. Because if not, I'm going to go talk to the Jets. Let's be honest. He didn't want to go fucking coach the Jets.
No.
Ain't nobody want to coach the Jets right now except Rex Ryan, which we'll get to that in a second.
Well, however, the New Orleans Saints.
Saints are getting
Aaron Glenn. A little. You think so?
Aaron Glenn. I think it fits. I think they need to fix that defense a little bit. The moving on from Lattimore kind of made sense, which we also forgot to highlight. We're getting Mike Evans versus Marshawn Lattimore this weekend in that Tampa Bay versus Commanders game, which is going to be amazing. Those two always end up boxing, and I love that. But no, I think Aaron Glenn really fits for New Orleans. I think Rizzi did a great job, but I think the Saints are going to learn from what the Raiders had, that just because he had the team in the locker room does not mean he's got the juice to make it to the next level. Rizzi didn't win a lot of games. As much as you love Rizzi, he might come back as a special teams coordinator. But I think Aaron Glenn is the defensive-minded guy, rebuild around a defense that might be losing Cam Jordan. I think that's the best first step, especially since you have no idea what the hell you're doing at quarterback, and you're way too low in this draft to even think about picking one of them.
Yep. I personally think it's going to be Cliff Kingsbury. I think he's just a perfect fit in New Orleans. I think he, what he's been able to prove that he can still coach. I think if he gets a head coach opportunity, I think the Saints are the perfect position. And finally, the stinky Jets, who really, I mean, they've interviewed a ton of people and they're trying to cross off everyone. But like you said, I don't think anybody wants to be there. Not only is it because it's the Jets, but they have to do something with Rodgers.
Mm-hmm.
They
the big
traded a bunch of players to get all these guys that Rodgers wanted, and nobody wants these guys on their depth chart. I mean, besides Devontae, everyone else, I mean, it's a defensive team. I think if they're smart, they would go with Rex just because he wants to be there. And I want him there just because they sucked when he was there. Besides the one season with Sanchez, and but
Well, multiple
overall,
seasons. Let's be fair. They
they
got
were
to
a
the AFC
pushover.
Championship game multiple times with Mark. They
But the
never
only
got to the
thing I'm
Super
gonna
Bowl.
say is Brian Flores would be a perfect fit if it's not Rex Ryan.
I could not agree more, my friend. You took the name right out of my mouth. Brian Flores is the main pick to me here because I think the man has a chip on his shoulder. He's the only guy that could probably get these young guys actually, snapped up straight. Because let's not forget, Rodgers may be out, but Garrett Wilson and Sauce sound like they're out too.
Yep.
And you need somebody that's not only going to get the attention of the young guys and keep them there, but get them on track while they are there. And I
And
think
Flores,
Brian
if he gets that
Flores,
defense, that'll be a scary ass defense.
it would. And that's my point. I think Rex could make something out of it too. But realistically speaking, I agree with you. I mean, Rex seems to think that he has this whole thing wrapped up for the Jets, but he's
Yep.
also full of himself. So let's be
Yep.
honest. And the defense does mimic what Rex had when he was there because you got the Revis Sauce thing, you got the linebackers there. It really does make sense. But I think you go with the more modern day Rex Ryan, and that's Brian Flores. Plus, it's time for everybody to get rid of this whole blackballing of Brian Flores. I know you said
Uh,
yourself that he's not an HC. I disagree. I think
I
the
don't think
guy has
so.
proven himself, and I think the Jets need that. And honestly, I think if you get a Brian Flores, you could potentially convince Aaron to stay. Not if you want to, because I think Aaron might retire. I think it might just be time for Aaron to move on from football. But that's not me. I don't know the man. I don't know what his plans are. But you can talk to McAfee. He talks to the guy every week. But I do believe Brian Flores is that guy. I think that's the guy to reignite the defense. And if you can get somebody to come in and run the offense, whether it's a Kirk Cousins or if they trade for JJ, which I think JJ would be the best choice, especially if the Vikings decide they want to hold on to Sam Darnold, or you go
Mhm.
back to Sam Darnold if he decides that he wants to come back to New York and actually try again. But the realistic situation is you still need to put somebody around that young star, which means you're going to either decide you need to keep Devontae because we also have to figure out what you're going to do with his contract after this
Right. Or
year.
they go get Carr and team
Yeah,
Carr up with Devontae again.
again, and we try that for the up team time, which we've already figured out doesn't work like you think.
No.
So I think Brian Flores is the man to come in and whip that team into shape.
Yes, sir. Well, you guys enjoy your weekend. And I swear to God, if Denver beats Buffalo, I'm going to come out looking like the Joker next week because I'll be from ear
I'll
to ear
send you a Tim
smiling.
Tebow jersey to wear. How about that? I'll
No.
give you a Tebow jersey you can wear in the next episode. Or actually, I'll wear it. If they, you know what? No, I'll wear it. If the Denver Broncos win, I will wear the Tebow jersey. But if the Bills win, you have to wear my Josh Allen jersey.
That'll never happen.
Come on.
That'll never happen.
If this video gets what 100 likes,
You'll
Sparky has
never
to do
see
it.
me in a Bills uniform. But you guys enjoy your weekend. It's almost time for SmackDown and the Ohio State. Who you got in that game?
Ooh, Ohio State Texas is going to be a great game, but I'm going with Texas. I think Ohio State has a great
Whoa.
team, but I think Texas just has what it takes. But I also have a tinfoil hat theory that we are going to get a somewhat of a repeat from what Alabama had to deal with Jalen Hurts a couple years ago. That Texas gets the championship game, but Q and Ayers does not play well in the first half, leading them in Sarkeesian to have to bench the
Tua.
senior for the young star of Archie Manning, who leads Texas back to beat Notre Dame for their championship.
That would
I
be
could see it.
awesome.
I could see it. I'm just writing scripts today, Sparky. I'm sorry. I'm
You
writing
guys enjoy
scripts.
your weekend and we'll talk to you soon. Peace
Peace
out.
out.